these Tren de Aragua guys, because of your executive order, they are designated as foreign terrorists.
Yeah.
If ISIS or Al-Qaeda foreign terrorists were operating here in the United States, cops would probably be shooting first and asking questions later. And so what is the difference between terrorists, between somebody like an ISIS or an Al-Qaeda operative versus a MS-13 or Tren de Aragua?
Well, these are people that focus on destroying people in their homes. They're not as international in that sense. They're a group of thugs. They come from Venezuela. They come from the prisons of Venezuela. They're very, very dangerous people, but they didn't look so dangerous when the guards took care of the situation from El Salvador. And I want to thank the president. He's a friend of mine. He's done a great job. But I just can't imagine that the Democrats are taking this issue where they want to have them back. You know, so now they have men playing in women's sports. They have transgender for everyone. They have open borders. They have all of their crazy policies that are, I think, 95-5, not 90-10, okay? And their new policy is, let's bring Tren de Aragua back into our country. Let's bring the worst, these are the worst gang members there are. They looked amazingly frail, though, by the way they were handled. It's very amazing. You know, they weren't, when they were in Colorado cutting the fingers off a man because he made a phone call to the police, they seemed a lot tougher then than they did when they were having their heads shaved and they were in shackles. They're tough people. They're bad people. We don't want them in our country. We can't let a judge say that he wants him. You know, he didn't run for president. He didn't get much more than 80 million votes. And we just can't let that happen. It'd be so bad for our country. I won on the basis of getting criminals out of our country that were let in. It was called unforced error. They were let in by Biden, incompetently let in, and let in by the millions, actually. 21 million people. I believe it's 21 million. And that's not even including the gotaways, but these are rough people. We want them out of our country. And I won the election based at least partly on that, and that's a big part, yeah?
Mr. President, there's several things. I don't know if you saw this. Tim Walz is now saying about Trump supporters, and forgive me, I'm just reading a quote from Tim Walz, I think I could kick most of their ass.
Oh boy, he'd be in trouble.
Is there any way to know?
Well, he's a loser, you know, I mean, the guy's a loser. He lost an election. He played a part. You know, usually a vice president doesn't play a part, they say. I think Tim played a part. I think he was so bad that he hurt her. But she hurt herself, and Joe hurt them both. They didn't have a great group, but I would probably put him at the bottom of the group.
Have you heard that Biden wants to get back involved for Democratic politicians, fundraising, and campaigning against your policies?
I hope so. I hope so.
Mr. President, there are several families. Mr. President, there are families from some of the people.
Who are you with?
I'm with La Nación newspaper from Argentina. There are families from some of the people that were on those flights to El Salvador that claim that they're not criminals, they're not members of Tren de Aragua, of MS-13. What can you tell them, and what guarantees can you give them that everyone in those planes were actual criminals, terrorists, as you said?
Well, I was told that they went through a very strong vetting process, and that that will also be continuing in El Salvador. And if there's anything like that, we would certainly want to find out. But these were a bad group. This was a bad group, and they were in bad areas, and they were with a lot of other people that were absolutely killers, murderers, and people that were really bad, with the worst records you've ever seen. And but we will continue that process, absolutely. We don't want to make that kind of a mistake.
Is the U.S. planning to give up the position of NATO's Supreme Allied Commander, and if so, why?
NATO is something that I saved. NATO was gone until I came along. In fact, the previous Secretary General, very good man, both of them are good. The current man is fantastic. But both of them have said, if it wasn't for Trump, you wouldn't even have a NATO, because we were paying the cost of almost all of the countries. And now they're paying. I said, we're not going to do this. We're not going to continue. You hurt us on trade. You do bad things on trade. And then on top of it, we're supposed to pay for your military. And because of what I did, hundreds of billions of dollars flowed into NATO by countries that just weren't paying. They were delinquent. They weren't paying their bills. So NATO is solid. They're strong. But they have to treat us fairly. They
Are we
have
going to
treat
give
us-
up the?
Because look, without us, NATO's not the
And we're
same
giving-
thing.
we're
And I
giving-
can tell you, I've been having very good discussions, as you know, with President Zelensky and with President Putin. And President Putin will tell you that without the United States, he wouldn't be worried. But he is worried when the United States is involved. And I have to tell you, I've dealt very well with both gentlemen, and we have, I think we have the confines of a deal. I hope we have the confines of a deal. I'm doing it for two reasons. Number one, and by far most importantly, thousands of young people, and they're not American people, they're Russian and they're Ukrainian, are being killed every week, thousands a week. And also the United States has paid, because of Biden, $350 billion on a war that should have never happened. If we had a competent president in this, sitting right here, that war would have never happened. It would have absolutely never happened with me. And it didn't happen. For 4 years, it didn't happen.
Mr. President, do you think you have the authority, the power to round up people, deport them, and then you're under no obligation to a court to show the evidence against them?
Well, that's what the law says, and that's what our country needs, because we were, unfortunately, they allowed millions of people to come into our country, totally unvetted, totally unchecked. So you ought to ask, did he have the authority to allow millions of people? Did Biden have the authority to do something that's unthinkable? Have open borders where millions of people poured into our country, totally unvetted and totally unchecked, just as you would say. And many of those people were criminals. Many of them were from jails and prisons and mental institutions and gang members and drug dealers and very dangerous people. Many were murderers. We have 11,088 that we know of murderers they murdered. Of that number, at least half killed more than one person. They're in our country. They're in a location near you. Biden allowed that to happen to our country. And his people that really ran the country. And the person that operated the auto pen, I think we ought to find out who that was, because I guess that was the real president. So when you ask me if we have the authority, did Biden have the authority to allow millions of people to come into our country? Many of these people, hardened criminals at the top of the line who have caused tremendous damage in our country. You see them in New York City fighting with our police. I mean, literally having fist fights in the street with our police. These are tough, hard criminals. Many of them came out of jails, and not just South America, from all over the world. They came out from Africa, from the Congo. They came out from Asia. Not just South America, but many from South America. These are hard, tough criminals, and we have to get them out. And a judge sitting behind a bench someplace got a nice appointment. You can't take that away from the people that are responsible. Now, in this case, Marco Rubio has a lot of big decisions to make, and he's a fantastic person, a great man. I think he'll be our best. I think he has a chance to be our best Secretary of State. He's been doing incredibly. He works so hard. He's gone to so many different countries already, and he's got the authority to get bad people out of our country. And you can't stop that with a judge sitting behind a bench that has no idea what goes on, who happens to be a radical left lunatic.
Do you think the
Mr.
judiciary is
President,
too
you guys today are denying this New York Times report that Elon Musk was going to be shown a 20 to 30 page presentation about a theoretical war plan against China. Why not just show it to Elon?
Because I don't want to show it to anybody. You know, you're talking about a potential war with China. Now, I deal with these people all the time, and I'm dealing with Pete, I'm dealing with these gentlemen on numerous different airplane purchases, and I think they're all going to be great. But I don't want other people anybody seeing potential war with China. We don't want to have a potential war with China, but I can tell you if we did, we're very well equipped to handle it. But I don't want to show that to anybody, but certainly you wouldn't show it to a businessman who is helping us so much. He's a great patriot. He's paying a big price